I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember bacon makes everything better.
Welcome back into the postseason edition of the fifth quarter, right here on the North Carolina Sports Network. I am Mike Waddell. He is the coach, Jim Collins, and tonight's show is brought to you by Saltworks down in Wilmington, the number one place to get breakfast or lunch. Bob Hubbard grilling up classics left and right. And Jim, I tell you, as you were trying to be a brave soldier and get through the cold weather of Wilmington, 30 whole degrees down there. Hopefully you're getting over there and getting some bacon or sausage or whatever Bob has over there for the North Carolina pork community and keeping your strength up. I hope you're able to manage the cold weather over there in Wilmington.
Well, it's been a real struggle for us here, Mike, but especially since the golf course is closed down, it's made an even bigger struggle for us. But I do need to get over to see Bob and the folks over there and have some bacon and some omelets or a big burger for lunch and see if I can get my buddy Bob Sanders, who's here with me, see if I can get him down to the Salt Works and have a good lunch or a breakfast.
Man, it's Coach-a-Palooza down in Wilmington right now with the legend Bob Sanders, veteran collegiate and pro assistant coach, and of course with yourself, the head coach of the fifth quarter right here. Later on in today's show, we're going to have the opportunity to talk with Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator of the Ohio State Buckeyes, who will be matched up with Notre Dame in the first ever CFP tournament championship game coming up on the 20th of January. Quite a day here in the United States. The president being inaugurated in D.C. and a new college football champion will be crowned in Atlanta. I've got to tell you, I did not think as we started this tournament that you'd see Ohio State make that kind of a run, but darn it, the Buckeyes haven't won a lot of people over, including myself, the original Buckeye hater. You spent 10 years in the state of Ohio, 5 at Akron, 5 at Cincinnati, with football teams competing against the Buckeyes. You don't like those guys. But damn, they have really showed some resolve ever since that fourth consecutive loss to the Wolverines of Michigan back on November 30th.
I tell you what, Mike, as you can see, my buddy Bob Sanders stick with his head in the camera here. Glad to have Bob here. We're headed up tomorrow to the American Football Coaches Association clinic there in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we're going to ride up together and visit with some people. But yes, the Buckeyes have rallied since that fateful day in November against the Michigan Wolverines, and they have played just absolutely outstanding over the last 3 weeks. Great performances on defense. You could go back and trace them back to the Tennessee game, to the Oregon game. And I think without a doubt, they've had the toughest road to get to January 20th of any of the teams that had the possibility to be there. From just a total domination of the Tennessee Vols there in Columbus to going down and playing just an outstanding game against Oregon, the way they contained Dylan Gabriel and the things they did against him, and then another outstanding performance highlighted by outside linebacker defensive end Jack Sawyer's sack, fumble, touchdown run to make the score 28-14. They played outstanding defense without a doubt. Pleased for my man Jim Knowles.
We will talk to Jim Knowles coming up later in the show. Right now we do have Bob Sanders, another North Carolina legend, started his coaching career back in the bicentennial year of 1976 at Southwest Onslow. Since then, and just give me about 5 minutes to go through Bob's tail of the tape right here because it's almost as impressive as Jim's and mine. You've been everywhere. Georgia Tech, East Carolina, Richmond, Duke, Florida, the Miami Dolphins, Green Bay Packers. So you know, Cole, you know Jim is being a bit of a wuss and talking about New Hanover
That's
County.
south. That's south of Green Bay.
That's crazy. Buffalo Bills, another cold place. The Oakland Raiders, man, I got to hear some of those stories. Arizona Cardinals. Of course, the highlight of your career, the World Championship of Spring Football with the Orlando Apollos. There we go. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2022. Bob Saunders, welcome right here
Thank
to
you.
the fifth quarter.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate y'all having me.
I tell you, one of my greatest memories of the Orlando Apollos was as the team president sharing that front right seat with you driving in to the Atlanta game. That was our next to last game, I think, but that was one of the quickest games. It's one of Jim and my favorite games to talk about because it darn near lasted under 2 hours. What are your best memories of our Orlando Apollos tenure?
Just so many good memories, and the adversity that we face as a team, from going from Orlando to Jacksonville, having to practice in South Georgia by bus every day, then back to Orlando, and the games were fun, and just working for Coach Sprayer, getting the group back together, getting back with Jim. We had been together for so many years, and I guess 16 years when we went there, and the things we were up against and had to fight through as a staff. We had a couple of young guys we were trying to train, and so it was just a fun time all the way around.
Man, it really was. And I'll tell you what, and both of you weigh in on this one. We're going to talk later to Coach Knowles of Ohio State about the fact that they've already played in 2 bowl games and now will be going to a college football championship game. It's a very different mindset now in college football. But when we were with the Orlando Apollos during that 2019 spring season, what Coach Saunders was referring to right there is because of the workers' compensation laws in the state of Florida, we could not be in the state of Florida as a team, but for so many days out of the year. So we actually had to live in Jacksonville and bus over the state lines and practice in Georgia. So it was almost like we were in a 9-week bowl trip. How would you guys describe that type of challenge to deal with as coaches? I mean, it really was one of the more unique situations, never to be repeated likely in the future of college or pro football.
Yeah, Jim and I talked about that all the time and laughed because it definitely was like a bowl game, because we stayed in a hotel and there was a room that was attached to my room that was used for our staff room, and then the D line. And when my wife would come, she would have to listen to the D line meeting, which was get pretty intense. And but just having to go upstairs and eat at the hotel and back down, and then the meeting rooms were divided. When Coach Sprayer would have a team meeting, and then we'd have to divide them down the middle to have our defensive meeting, and then we'd meet in our hotel rooms with the guys, and so it was unique. It was definitely a 9-week bowl game for sure.
I'll tell you a little funny story about that. My meeting room was attached to my room. And we had been in Jacksonville for a couple of weeks, and I would walk out of my bedroom to start the meeting. I was there. I was there one morning. I was already in the meeting room, and I would close the door off, and the players had started coming in, and my wife had come into town the previous evening and was in the room. Well, she opens the attached door, and walks into the meeting, and the players all went, and they were so stunned. And then she said, "Oh, excuse me for interrupting." And they all looked at me like, "Coach, what have you been doing?" I said, "Oh, guys," I said, "that's my wife now. Slow down."
Coach has some game.
It was interesting how the looks that I got from those guys.
You guys both were part of the Florida National Championship in 1996. And now, no matter who wins this game coming up, they're going to be new coaches, be them from Ohio State or from Notre Dame, who joined that national championship club. Tell me, as you look back now to 1996, how much that means to you almost 30 years later.
Well, that's one thing that nobody can ever take from us. I mean, no matter what happens, we were actually there in '95 and ended up behind the woodshed with Nebraska,
Yeah.
and actually learned a lot of lessons from that game about playing all out. Don't worry about. I hope I don't make a mistake to lose the game. Just go ahead and play, and there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, and so we'll just overcome when we have to. So just going in and playing, we learned those things. But it's something that nobody can take from us. It's interesting sometimes now, when we have an opportunity to speak at a Rotary Club or something, or just some event. You mentioned '96, and if there's young people there, I mean, they look at you like you got four eyes, like it was 1896. I mean, there's no question that it was a while ago, but it's something that that we take great pride in, and the guys still contact us. We still get together in Gainesville. It still means the world to the fans and everybody at our school. So there's no doubt that it is a tremendous honor, and very appreciative that we had the opportunity to be there to do that.
Well, it's so different now, and I think the big thing is, Mike, that and I'm sure Bob will agree with me on this. We had no idea until the day before the game that it was actually the game for the national championship was a second game against Florida State in the Sugar Bowl. Well, we actually had no idea it was going to be for the national championship until some other games were decided the day before. And I think the thing I'll never forget, Bob, is the meeting the night before the game when we finished the meeting, finished all the individual meetings, the group meetings, and then the players all stood up and we lined up as coaches, and they all walked out with tears in their eyes, and they all shook our hands. I get cold chills talking about it now. Shook our hands, looked us in the eye. We all committed to give our best the next day. And we stayed in Gonzales, Louisiana, which is an hour outside of Baton Rouge, or excuse me, outside of New Orleans. I've never been on a bus ride for an hour that you did not hear one sound. You remember that, Bob?
Yeah.
Remember how quiet it was on that bus? And it was just an unbelievable experience, and an experience that as we get ready to talk to Jim Knowles down the road, I hope we have the opportunity to welcome him into this national championship club.
I can remember when actually we were at a little Holiday Inn, to be exact, and it was one of those that just two stories, and it was just a hot, muggy kind of a night. Everybody's door was open. Everybody was watching the games that were on, and when the right situation fell, it was like something exploded. Everybody was in the courtyard. They were on the balconies cheering, and it was just it's just an eruption of emotions that we had an opportunity to get in that game, and especially against those guys that we needed to play. We had been a little bit banged up when we had been undefeated when they beat us in the regular season, but we had quite a few injuries, and we never really got involved in that. It was just next man up, but we got healthy in December. I can remember, just like Jimmy said, I walked in, in the Superdome, they had different rooms that were in the locker room, and my guys were in one room, and I went in there before the game to talk to them. And when I walked in, every single one of them, you could see the tears had dried on their cheeks. They were just sitting there crying before the game. Their tears dried on their cheeks all the way down their face. And I just turned around and walked out. I said, guys, it's on tonight. It is on. So yeah, I didn't even say a word. So it was a unique experience, a lot of great memories. And after the game, down on Bourbon Street was, my daughter still talk. I think they were like 11 and 12, and they, 14 maybe, and I mean they still talk. In fact, we talked about it the other night, about going down there 3 or 4 in the morning, and it was just a great time.
When I was at Cincinnati, we played Florida in the Sugar Bowl after the 2009 season. So I guess technically it was on January 1st, 2010. But that morning, I went for a run from our hotel in the quarter over to the Superdome, and I used my pass, and I got in about 6:30 in the morning. Nobody was there yet, and I went out to the center of the field. The lights weren't on; only the safety lights were there, so it's very dim. But I just laid down in the center of the field and looked up at the roof and said, "How in the hell did you get here?" Did you guys ever do anything that was just to take a moment and just soak it all in? I mean, I'm a broadcaster, man. I wasn't going to have a chance to do that at the time. I was an administrator. So it was a blessing of immense proportions to have that opportunity. But was there ever a time in each of your respective coaching histories in these big games in the postseason that you just took a moment to breathe in and say, damn, I made it to this very special moment?
Well, I think, two country boys, one from outside Greensboro, one from little Jacksonville, North Carolina, to have the opportunity. I know the Lord blessed us and, to give us that. So I think it was more of a blessing for me that, to have the opportunities that, God had a plan and a purpose for my life. And just to, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize all the people that helped me get to where I got, the Coach Spurriers and the Dow Sheelys and the Richard Bells. I could go on and on and on. The guys that poured into us, starting with Coach Pepper Rogers and, all through my career and just the people that poured into us and we had the opportunity. So there were many, many, many nights riding back from golf tournaments and stuff where, we talked about who would ever who would have ever thunk it, and so yeah, there's no question it was a blessing.
Well, without a doubt, Bob, is so true. It's so true that the good Lord has blessed us to be in the positions that we were in, and from Red Wilson to Jerry Tolley to Marion Kirby, I could go on and on and on with the names of the people that have influenced my career and influenced my life. And one of them is sitting right here beside me, one of my best friends in life. But we've had the opportunity to share so many great experiences from winning the national championship to winning 7 SECs to
89 at Duke
to 89 at Duke, all the championships we've been part of. But I think the biggest thing, and we were talking about this earlier this evening, is, at that time in our coaching careers, it was true friends. We were true friends. It's hard in this business this day and time to develop true friendships, and we've been blessed to have true friendships in this business.
In sports, we talk a lot about impact players who make a positive difference. When it comes to our state's economy, the North Carolina pork industry is a true MVP. Each year, the pork industry plays an important role in supporting rural communities across our state. It contributes more than $10 billion a year to the North Carolina economy and supports more than 44,000 jobs. Learn more about their positive impact at ncpork.org. The North Carolina Pork Council, the foundational partner of the North Carolina Sports Network. Michael Berard, Managing Director Investments with the Founders Group at Stifel, works with a select group of high net worth individuals and institutions to develop and implement investment plans tailored to their specific objectives and risk tolerances. If you are interested in highly personalized, well-researched guidance and outstanding personal service, you can contact Michael at 984-364-2002. That's 984-364-2002. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
When you talk about Marcus Freeman, you talk about a former Ohio State linebacker, and now he's going to be the head coach of the other team, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, on the sidelines Monday night in the CFP championship game. You guys have been in his position. You've been a coach in these big games. What's going through his mind right now, and how will that change as he gets closer to kickoff there in Atlanta?
I think the main thing that's going through his mind is just getting his guys as ready as he can get them. All the things that matter to fans sometimes and outside, aren't really a factor. And I think when you get to the game is, when you can finally take that breath and say, okay, let's go, because there's nothing else you can do. It's time to play. And, the calls and you've tried to have a plan to put your guys in the best position. But during the game, the calls aren't going to win the game. The players are going to win the game. Yeah. The guys that make the plays are going to win the game. So it's exciting to watch them play and then to stay on it, just, to focus enough to say if you see something that can help them or you need to make an adjustment, I think that'll be on Marcus's mind, just to make sure he can, make the adjustments that he needs to make at the time he needs to make them and those kind of things.
Very well said, Bob. There's no doubt about that. You have to tune out everything that the fans and even your administration, Mike, you'll understand this from being an administrator. All the things that they come at you with, that to tune all that out and to make sure that he doesn't have to worry about what time the plane leaves and if the buses are on time and all those things, so he can concentrate solely on coaching this team. And that's gotten even harder to do in today's lifestyle, in today's college football, than it was for Bob and I back in the days when we won the national championship, because of so many different things with name, image, and likeness and transfer portals and all that going on. But I think the key thing, and I tell people this a lot because I've had the opportunity to be both at Duke and at North Carolina in certain roles. And so people always ask me, well, who do you pull for? Who's your favorite team? Well, I don't have a favorite team anymore. I pull for who paid me at that time. And then at the same time, I pull for people that I have had associations with, just like with Ohio State. We're going to talk to Jim Knowles later on, and then on that same staff coaching the safeties is Matt Guerreri, who I worked with at Duke, and Sam McGrath, who I worked with at Duke. So you pull for people when you get this far into our careers.
When you look at Ryan Day, here's a guy who's been in the spotlight before, but he's also lost 4 straight games to Michigan. On November 30th, he was rumored to be on the way out. There were a lot of people in Buckeye land that wanted Ryan Day fired. 51 days later, he's playing for a national championship. I got to tell you, that type of resiliency has won a lot of people over, including myself. As I said earlier, I've never cheered for the damn Buckeyes a day in my life, but I'll cheer for them. And at the same time, you kind of feel for a guy like Riley Leonard, who has gone through the battles and has, led Duke to, previously unheard of heights, in the current era of college football, though the Blue Devils this year did win more games. And this really does shape up to be a quite a story for Ryan Day, the head coach of the Buckeyes of Ohio State.
It really does. And, I think Coach Day, I don't know him, never met him. But to me, that's what football coaches do. You turn a setback into a comeback. And to me, just, sticking to the plan. He had a good plan. He stuck to it. He didn't panic, and he just, stayed with what he believed in. And, he's got great coaches. He let them continue to coach, just like, that defensive staff that's playing such great defense, and he let them coach, and they got it railed back up, and they got a chance to make something really big happen. So, to me, it just is an example of what a true football coach is. And like I say, I don't know Coach Day, but have a lot of respect for what he did after those things, and when everybody had written him off, for a little bit like us, in '96 with when we lost to Florida State, everybody kind of wrote us off as well, and but then the right things happened.
Well, I was going to tell a quick story, and I think I may have told this before on one of our other shows, is that Coach Spurrier made the comment at one point that we would rather have a chance to win a championship, meaning the SEC or a national championship, than to beat Florida State. And the Gator fans, I spoke at the Jacksonville Gator Club not long after that statement, and I told the people there that night, I said, you folks now, because I received a question, do we not really want to beat Florida State? I said, are you kidding me? Of course we want to beat Florida State. I said, you guys misinterpreted that completely. That's why, and I use that as an example, that you have to tune all the outside noise out. You know, what's important is what goes on inside the building with those players and your coaching staff and the people that count and the people that are actually going to go play the game.
We've not got one, but we have two national championship coaches with us this week on the fifth quarter, as usual. Our head coach, Jim Collins, and also joining us now is Bob Saunders here on the fifth quarter. And I have to ask you guys before we wrap up this week's edition, I heard from a lot of coaches over the years that one of the things that they really want their players to do is to learn how to make the game appear to them to slow down. And when they do that, they can see and do so many different things, both physically and mentally. How do you coach a player or guide them to that type of a talent to be able to slow the game down and not get too hyped up?
Yeah, I think, it starts in practice, and you make your practices as close to game speed, and it goes back to techniques and fundamentals, and just like I think we've seen with Ohio State, and even you really with Coach Freeman up there at Notre Dame. I mean, he stuck to his guns in some tough times too. So really good football coach up there too. But I think getting your guys where they can having them in positions, that's why we spend so much time in video and getting, in preparation to get your guys into situations that they're going to see during the game. And then with the fundamentals and techniques that they learn, and then just rep. The problem with guys a lot of times is their vision. They're looking at the wrong things, or they're seeing too much. We used to always say, aim small, miss small. So get your vision where it's supposed to be, and then respond accordingly. And then, but I think that's how the game slows down is experience, but then the reps that you get in practice, the game type reps that you get in practice, quality game type reps over and over and over and over, doing the same thing over and over again, having stability. Like, we talked about Ohio State and Notre Dame, they stayed the course, they've kept the systems, they've let their coaches coach. And now because of that, I think the game slowed down for both of those teams, and they've won big games heading into the biggest one, of the year.
Mike, David Cutcliffe used to make this statement all the time to the staff and to the team, and the years that I worked for and with him, and that statement was always, practice makes permanent. So whatever you do in practice is what carries you through to the game, and that's why you have to practice at game speed, and it's so critical. And people out there are going to say, well, you don't tackle full speed in practice, and there are things that aren't the same, but you run a play full speed, you get to the point where you would make that tackle, you get to the point where you would finish that block. You just have to do everything at game speed. And that's what slows the game down. And one of the most important things is as a coach is we are teachers. Coaches are teachers. And you have to do an outstanding job of planning your meetings, and your meetings are so critical to what they carry as a player, from the meeting room to the walkthrough to the actual team situations and the individual situations during practice. So planning your meeting and how you're going to teach players, because just like when you're a high school teacher or a middle school teacher, different students learn different ways.
Right.
Players learn different ways, and you have to find which way that they can learn and absorb what you need them to do when it all comes to full speed.
I think the biggest thing too for us, even with the Apollos, and you'll remember this, Mike, we try to set a standard in the environment that we had, and everybody was we had some good players that refused to or wanted to buck the standard, and we said no, the standard is the standard. And finally we just had to cut ties with a few pretty good players because we had a standard, and if they weren't going to hear that standard, then we weren't going to be successful, because you had to get a culture. And I think having that culture like those teams have, with a standard that is the standard, and then upholding everybody to that standard regardless of who they are, or anything about them. The best players we've ever coached, and I don't want to speak for Jim, but I know we've talked about this a lot. The best players we've ever coached held themselves to a higher standard.
Sure.
The all-pro players that we're fortunate enough to be around, the guys like Junior Seau and Zach Thomas, those guys, they held themselves to a different standard. Tom Brady, when I was on the staff in Tampa, just watching him, Brett Favre, those kind of guys, just being around those guys, they made everybody better, and because they upheld that standard. So I think that's the way the game slows down to those guys, because of the way they work and the way they look and the things Jim said, the way they're taught, and then the way they approach the game, and they hold that standard that is the standard.
Well, there's no doubt. That's so well said by Bob, and it is the great players of the game, whether they're great pros or all pros, Hall of Famers, whatever they may be. They're your best workers. They're the guys that come to work every day early and stay late. They study the most video. They commit to being great, and that's what it takes. It takes a total commitment from all of us. I would be willing to make a wager that when we speak to Jim Knowles later this evening, that he will probably be at work and grinding away, preparing for the upcoming game on January 20th.
Notre Dame has been on a 4-month winning streak after losing to Northern Illinois. And Ohio State, now at 13-2, has a chance to win a 14th game if they can get past the Fighting Irish. It is prediction time, guys. Do we go with Ohio State out of the Big Ten or the Notre Dame Fighting Irish? Who do you like, the Irish or the Buckeyes? We'll start with you, Coach Saunders.
I'm going with the Buckeyes. I think they're playing at a high level right now, even though Notre Dame's playing well. I don't think they can match up with with the talent that the Buckeyes have and the way they're playing right now.
Well, as you know, I have lots of former associates and friends on the Ohio State staff, but that's not the only reason that I'm picking the Buckeyes. Just like Bob said, they're playing at an extremely high level at this point in time, and I think they will challenge defensively. They'll challenge the Notre Dame offense at a very high standard, and I think the matchup between the Ohio State receivers and the Notre Dame corners will be a critical matchup in the game. But I think the Ohio State running game, along with the Ohio State defense, will bring the Buckeyes a national championship.
I would tend to agree with you guys. I'm going to pick Ohio State as well. But I remember in 2013 when one of my former head coaches, Brian Kelly, last led the Fighting Irish to that championship game, and they were fundamentally destroyed by Alabama. I think this is going to be a blowout. I think that the loss of Anthony Knapp on that Notre Dame starting offensive line is going to be substantial. I think that probably by the end of the first half that we will be seeing Angeli as the quarterback of Notre Dame, because I think Riley Leonard, there's only so much punishment he can take, and Ohio State hits cold. They put a chill in your bones when they hit you. And I don't know how long they're going to be able to stay Notre Dame with Ohio State. I think this could be as complete a football team as you can have 16 games into a college football season. And that defense is pretty darn good. Jim, you called it a few weeks ago, and I asked you who you thought you were going to see raise the trophy up, and you were feeling Ohio State then. I think your prediction is still looking pretty good, my friend.
Well, Mike, I'll tell you the interesting thing about the matchup, and it'll be interesting to hear what Jim Knowles has to say. But their ability to contain Riley Leonard and keep him in the pocket and force him to beat them with his arm will be their challenge. And if they can do that, then we very well may see the blowout that you're talking about. I personally think it's going to be a relatively close game because I give Marcus Freeman and his staff a great deal of credit. They've been in a couple of situations in these playoffs where they could have easily folded their tent and lost their momentum. Not only going back to losing to Northern Illinois in the second game of the season, now they've polished off this huge winning streak. So I think there's there's a high degree of toughness and some resilience to this Notre Dame team, but I think the Buckeyes will be too much for them.
Jim Collins and Bob Saunders with us right here on the fifth quarter on the North Carolina Sports Network. Coming up next, we're going to talk with Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator of the Ohio State Buckeyes. It comes up next right here on the North Carolina Sports Network.
If you are anywhere near Wilmington, North Carolina, and looking for a little live music, a cold beer, a tangy slushy, a fun crowd, or just a taste of the good life at the beach, Jimmy's Bar in Wrightsville Beach is the place for you. Located on North Lumina Avenue, just 1 block from the sand and waves of the Atlantic Ocean, Jimmy's features a full bar with nightly beer and drink specials, and it hosts musical performers almost every day of the year. One more fun fact, Jimmy's annual Children's Bike Drive, which started in 2017, now distributes more than 1,000 bicycles and helmets per year to young people in the Wilmington area and beyond. Jimmy's Bar, your home away from home on Lumina Avenue in Wrightsville Beach.
This segment brought to you by our great friends at Atlantic Tire and Service, where DG and his family take all of their vehicles for routine maintenance, service needs, and a world-class selection of new tires. Atlantic Tire and Service, your one-stop tire and auto repair provider with highly trained technicians and a sales and support staff that are second to none. They've grown to 6 Triangle area locations, 2 in Raleigh, 2 in Cary, 1 in Durham, and 1 in Wake Forest. You can learn more online at AtlanticTireOnline.com.
Coming up on Monday night, college football will crown its national champion in the college football playoff between Notre Dame and Ohio State. And we are excited to have the defensive coordinator of the Buckeyes, Jim Knowles, back with us again for his second year here on the North Carolina Sports Network. And Jim, I was telling Coach Collins before we got you on the air here that in my 55, almost 56 years of watching football on this planet, I have never cheered for Ohio State until I met you. And now I cheer for the Buckeyes, and lo and behold, with my fandom propelling you forward, you have made it all the way to the CFP Championship. Brother, congratulations on an exciting ride ever since November 30th. I know that one was a tough pill to swallow, but dadgummit, if you guys just haven't spit that right back in all of your detractors' faces and come out like pure champions that you obviously were before that game, and right now have a chance to play for that ultimate prize come Monday night.
Yeah, thank you. Well, hopefully your fandom gets us over the top. But you know, we all know there are ups and downs, and you got to be able to utilize that adversity to make you stronger. We've been pretty good on defense all year. We had a little bit of a letdown in the first Oregon game, but overall it's been solid, and the guys are really have really picked things up, and they play hard, and they're resilient. We've had some goal line stops this year. I had one in the last game, and that's what wins for you in these tight games. It comes down to some situations that you have to win.
Heading into this season, Ohio State, you went through a lot of changes, both on and off the field, over a $20 million reported NIL budget. And this was really kind of a ground-shaking moment, I would think, for such a storied program to go back and, in essence, reinvent itself. Tell me how that process all came about.
The fortunate thing about being at Ohio State is I don't have to deal really with any of the NIL, and that's has taken over the game, and it's changed the game. But I get to just coach the players here, which is good because we have people who do that. And, I've just tried to stay consistent with, so I don't know how much they make. I don't want to know. And, they know I'll coach them. I'll coach them hard, whether they make $1 or $1 million, so I think my first year here, it felt like we were behind. Everything was new. And Ohio State's an old school program, and the fan base, the alums, they're used to giving money to you know, build buildings and that sort of thing, but not to pay players. So it felt like to me that it took us a year or so to get up and running, and now, fortunately, we're able to compete with anyone in that market.
Coach Collins always says that talent is talent, but he was a much better coach when he had great players. It did seem like this year that a lot of the teams that went into the portal heavy took some time to kind of find their rhythm. Do you think that's going to be something that is more or less the norm as we move forward in college football, that you're going to have to get deeper into the season before you see what a team's potential really is?
Yeah, I mean, there are those programs that turn over a lot of players every year, and um, I think that's hard. That's hard to get your team to gel, early in the season. Um, we, we participate in the portal market, but if you look at our team right now, you look at the defense. The majority of these guys have been with me for 3 years. We got Caleb Downs from Alabama, and he's exceptional. He's a complete professional. And we got Davidson Igbinosun from Ole Miss, at a corner position for us. But across the front and at the linebacker position, our nickel, our weak safety, you know, there's one corner. So we probably have 9 out of 11 starters that have been with me for 3 years.
Well,
That's it.
the interesting thing is, Jim, you guys have the opportunity to use the NFL philosophy, which is I'm going to supplement the draft. I refer to high school recruiting as the draft, and I refer to the transfer portal as free agency. So you're very selective in what you do in the transfer portal and free agency to supplement the players that are on your team right now. And and I agree with you 100%. Not that you need my agreement. Caleb Downs is out of sight. He's as good as I've seen as a safety.
Yeah, not only is he talented, but he studies the game, and, he recognizes formations, and, he sees the play before it happens. He makes the adjustments, and he's been a great example for everybody. We have really good kids here, which is a plus. When you deal with a lot of 4 and 5 star players, we don't really have any egos. But when Caleb shows up, when he got here, he's serious from day one. And he's just one of those guys that is going to take notes, is going to study, is going to come in early. I mean, he's a real professional. So you bring in somebody like that, and it just ups everybody's game.
Well, the interesting thing about him, Jim, and I know you know his history, is that his uncle is Dre Bly, who was uh, who was a great college player, Hall of Famer, and also a great pro. And then his brother is a starting receiver for the Indianapolis Colts, and Josh. So what a great football family. But Jim, I thought watching your Oregon game that what you did with him and your plan in that game against Dylan Gabriel was so typical Jim Knowles. I enjoyed watching that, and I texted you after the game and said, "What a great plan! I love that plan."
Thanks, JC. That means a lot because I know you know ball, and you've lived it, and yeah, I've just been trying to get him in position to make more plays, and be in the heart and the center of the defense, which, as is not easy for a DB, and that's and yeah, so we've started moving him around some second half of the season, and it's worked out really well for us.
We're talking with defensive coordinator Jim Knowles of the Ohio State Buckeyes on January 20th. They'll go head to head with Notre Dame in the college football playoff championship game down in Atlanta. Coach, you guys had a long time off between playing Michigan and coming back with that first round game against Tennessee. Looking at it now, do you think it was a benefit to not have a bye? in that first round and be able to get right back at it within 3 weeks. And against a team from the SEC with the Vols that had a lot of things that, tested you guys and got you back on a razor margin?
Boy, it certainly seems that way, doesn't it? I mean, I guess all the teams that played in the first round ended up winning, right? Am I correct? Is that the
Right.
way? Is that the way it came out? Yeah. So, um, I don't know if that is the cause of it. I'm not really sure. Or I think the way that the seeding went. Um, it wasn't like the NCAA basketball tournament. So I think that that made our path tough, and I think it took out some other teams. Certainly hope, or at least they should adjust it in the future. To where, okay, you pick the best 12, but then you seed them according to um, what you believe they are, not just because they played in a conference championship. I think the idea is to get the best teams and then get them in the best order. So I think that part of it is what really got some teams, and certainly made our path even more difficult.
You got the win over Tennessee 42-17 in that first round, then come back, beat the Oregon Ducks 41-21, and then most recently the win over Texas 28-14. Quinn Ewers started his career there in Columbus at Ohio State, and then of course, as everybody knows, he finished his career at Texas against Ohio State, and the Buckeyes put him into collegiate retirement. Was that something that a lot of people talked about, the media, the players, going around your football building there leading up to the game last week?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You would probably know better than me because I don't follow it. But I know our guys. They had a lot of respect for him, and a lot of them are friends, and Jack Sawyer, who got that strip sack, caused fumble, touchdown. I mean, those guys roomed together when he was here. So, I think that there wasn't any animosity there, but I know they were looking forward to competing against him. On a solid friend to friend, see who's going to take it kind of thing competitively, but not, there was no animosity.
With Notre Dame being your opponent right now, one big piece of news that came out over the weekend is that their starting left tackle, Anthony Knapp, will not play in this game. How will you exploit that and try to get more pressure on that edge coming off the very protective side of Riley Leonard?
Well, he's got he can take off on you,
Right.
so you got to be careful, so it's one thing to have a good matchup, but he finds his way out of a lot of situations and he takes off pretty quick. So even if you have a good matchup, you got to be careful with your rush, and you got to be controlled.
You got two good edge rushers there, Jim, and those two kids, and you get a little bit of push in the middle and let those guys go to work a little bit, and it'll be an interesting matchup to watch without a doubt.
Yeah, we've had some real production out of our front, and a lot of it, Jim, as you know, goes unnoticed. I mean, they make a lot of plays in the run game too, and I think these kids here, they're under a lot of pressure. They really are. I mean, this is um it's a place where you're expected to win every game and never give up a first down. So I mean,
Yeah, I've been
yeah,
there. I
yeah,
know.
yeah. It's like that. I mean, we have the number one defense in the country, but you kind of wouldn't know it. I mean, it's just the expectations are really high, and I think that that can have an effect on the these guys. We're paying the money now, which I think is great. I mean,
Yeah.
I make money, the school makes money, they should make money. But as you know, I mean, they're still young men. You know, we're still developing them, and they're still growing up. So I think, you know, a lot of times, you know, people expect them to make every play, and they don't see a lot of the dirty work that they do. You know, so it's always good when they do make the flash plays. You know, I feel good for them because, you know, they're under a lot of pressure here.
There's no doubt, and it shows. Excuse me, Mike, but it does show. And the average fan sitting in the stands and watching on TV has no idea that that those good pass rushers need good coverage in the back end, and those guys in the back end need good pass rushers. That it all fits together, and those safeties fitting the run and fitting into the front seven is so critical. How it all fits together. It's a shame, Jim, that. That it's that way, but we know what we sign up for when we decide to get into this business. That it's never good enough unless you win them all, and it's hard to win them all. And matter of fact, I'm going to hope I can welcome you to the National Championship Club. You know, I've got one, and hope you'll have one after the 20th. But it's a hard club to get into, and never have I been undefeated. So it's tough, man. People out there don't realize how tough it is.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got good players. You know, as you know, every coach and staff works hard. Everybody puts together a game plan, tries to exploit your weaknesses, and capitalize on their strengths. And you know, yeah, it's a competitive business, and you know, winning them all is ideal, but I'll certainly take just winning the last one would be good.
Exactly.
Coach
No
Knowles,
doubt.
you guys have been going at this since early August, late July. And as you said, these guys are still growing, they're maturing, all of that. But this will be their 16th game, the 16th game for Ohio State when you tee it up against the Fighting Irish in Atlanta. Did you ever think you'd see a 16-game schedule for a collegiate team, which is almost like the NFL classic regular season schedule total? And how have you tried to keep this fresh in your defensive room? I mean, because at some point, you know, kids just tend to lose their attention span. How do you hold their attention? I guess they're big enough stakes that would do it, but I'm sure you have some Jedi mind tricks that you're playing on these guys to keep them ready.
Yeah, it's kind of like Jim said. I mean, they know when you come to Ohio State that this is what you sign up for. I mean, these are the expectations, right? So, I mean, yeah, we try to juice it up in the meetings and on the field and keep it fresh. But you know, these guys are all pre-professional. I mean, they all want an NFL career, and you know, so we're training them for, okay, this is what it's like, you know, and you got to have a process, and you got to repeat that process over and over again, and you got to stick to it. And you got to embrace that grind, you know, but you get into your routine, and you do try to stick to that routine because, you know, that's what makes or breaks you is your habits.
Thank you, Coach Knowles. Thank you, Coach Collins. And thank you to all of you tuned in here to the North Carolina Sports Network for this edition of the Fifth Quarter, proudly sponsored by the Original Salt Works and owner Bob Hubbard down in Wilmington, one of the great places to get breakfast or lunch. It is the place to be at the beach for food. Outstanding 24/7. 365. We also want to thank you for subscribing here to the North Carolina Sports Network. Almost 30,000 subscribers right now. Follow us online at our website, ncsportsnetwork.com, and on social media at the NC Sports Net. For Jim Collins, Bob Saunders, and Jim Knowles, thank you for tuning in to this edition of the Fifth Quarter on the North Carolina Sports Network.